Hello all, this is a part 2 of chapter 14, Health Psychology. In part 2 of the video, we will discuss how does personality affect the experience of stress, what social factors, for example, like social support, influence stress reactions, what are some ways in which people cope with stress reactions, and lastly, what are some ways to make positive life changes. So first, we'll go over several types of personality that are known to be associated with how people experience stress. And you can consider personality as a persistent behavior patterns, and actually the textbook also uses these terms. So first, type A personality or behavior pattern is where an individual are very competitive and hardworking. And if you hear just these characteristics, you might think people with type A personality are just trying to become their best. But notice that they can also easily be annoyed and have pretty high levels of hostility and anger. And what kind of health risks do you think people who are always angry have? So people with type A personality have a higher incidence of heart disease. And kind of opposite from type A personality is the type B personality. Some characteristics of type B personality are being relaxed and laid back, and they're slow to anger. Again, very different from type A personality. And as a result, people with type B personality have lower incidence of heart disease. And actually, there is a study that compared the differences in the incidence of experiencing heart disease between people with type A and type B personality. And as you would expect, type A personality was associated with higher incidence of heart disease. Roughly, if you look at this graph, roughly about 75% of individuals with type A personality had heart disease compared to less than half of the individual with type B personality. And other than type A and type B, there is a type D personality. So type D is those who are negative and fear rejection, and as a result, tend to be anxious of socially going out. And they tend to have low self-confidence as well. And so as a result, kind of similar to type A, type D is also known to be at risk for developing cardiovascular disease, which does include heart disease. And so we've covered type A, B, and D, and you might be wondering the presence of type C personality. And yes, there is a type C personality, but the textbook does not talk about it, so we will just briefly go over what type C personality is. So type C personality is those who are people pleaser, and therefore does not like to express their opinions or emotions, basically internalizing their anger and anxiety. But they may be good at focusing on the details of a given situation and are also known to be interested in rationality and logic. But the personality that is known to be the most healthy in coping with stress is the hardy personality. Basically, people who are capable of withstanding difficult situations. So some characteristics of this personality are they tend to thrive on stress without the anger and hostility, unlike the type A. They also have a sense of commitment, are able to focus on what they can control and view problem as a challenge to be met and answered. And does the last point of viewing the problem as a challenge, does this sound familiar to you? If so, you probably were paying attention. You were paying attention to the part 1 of the video. So in part 1 of the video, we discussed about this in the primary appraisal, where an individual would assess whether the severity of a stressor would be classified as either a threat or a challenge. So there are some overlaps. But one thing to note is that just because you completely fit with one personality type we just discussed does not mean you're stuck with that personality forever. Personality is a stable trait, but it is based on several factors, such as our personal experiences, relationships, and surrounding environment. So personality may change as we improve our surrounding environment and the people who we hang out with. Besides personality, there are a number of social factors that are known to influence stress. And one important factor is social support. So having social support allows us to offer and receive support from others, indicating that one is loved and cared for, esteemed, and valued. And we can build social support from various people around us. So it could be our family members, friends, community members, partners, co-workers, or neighbors, or it could be someone else that was not on this list. And having these people are very valuable, where they may be able to help us when we really need them. And it could also be a powerful moment if we have someone in our lives where we can share our deepest emotion. Oops. And related to sharing our emotion, research has shown that writing about our difficult moments can actually improve our health. This was proposed by Dr. James Pennebaker, who is a professor at UT Austin. But it's important that an individual write for at least 20 minutes about a single topic related to a stressful traumatic event. So it's not important to focus on the grammar or spelling. It's important to freely express, write all the emotions, our thoughts, and our feelings. And it's also suggested that if you don't want to focus on the negative event, you could also apply this to a positive event as well. So if you're interested in these activities, if you like writing, I would highly recommend trying out these. Another factor that's known to influence stress is religious faith. Research has shown that people with religious beliefs have been found to cope better with stressful events. And for example, after 9/11 attacks, searching for spiritual meaning was associated with less anxiety and depression. And one of the many reasons that religious faith may be associated with less stress could be overlapping with what we talked about in social support, where an individual may be able to seek support from their religious and spiritual members. So again, there may be a lot of different reasons why religious faith is associated with better coping. And in coping with stress, there are many ways to cope. But studies have shown that we might be able to categorize them in two. And one of them is called problem-focused coping, which tries to eliminate the source of a stress or reduce its impact through direct actions. So if you could identify the cause of your stress, problem-focused coping would directly attempt to eliminate the cause of the problem. So for example, if an individual has been constantly forgetting about class assignment and about homework, he or she may buy a planner and write down all the due dates for the assignment, or they may ask a friend to remind them about the upcoming assignments. So these solutions are attempting to directly eliminate the cause of the stress, which again was forgetting about the class assignment. Another category for coping is the emotion-focused coping, which tries to change the impact of a stressor by changing the emotional reaction to the stressor. So as opposed to directly eliminating the cause of the stress, emotion-focused coping may, for example, engage in exercise or take a bath to make an individual feel better. But there are unadaptive, unhealthy emotion-focused coping, such as relying on alcohol or drugs. So it becomes important to choose the healthier emotion-focused coping strategies. So here, I have an example of a stressor. And so say you are working and you open your email to find your annual performance review. The review states that you are below average in several areas, and you're surprised by this because you thought you were doing well, and you feel anxious and frustrated as a result. So in this case, what would be an example of problem-focused coping? Again, problem-focused coping is to eliminate or reduce the source of the stress. So an example may be to directly go and talk to the boss about what you could do to improve your performance. So that way, you're able to develop a clear plan that will help you perform better. And what would be an example of emotion-focused coping? And because emotion-focused coping could be things that are unrelated to the source of the stress, there could be various options that you could choose from. But some example of emotion-focused coping may be to spend, for example, your lunch break reading a book or going for a walk to just distract yourself from anxiety and frustration. And after you go back home after work, you might go and exercise or clean the house as a way to help you feel better. So hopefully this example kind of clarifies what problem-focused, emotion-focused coping strategies are. And the last topic we'll talk about is how to make positive life changes. So in the beginning of the part 1 in health psychology, we discussed what is health. And we talked about healthy behavior could vary greatly. But I'm sure that we all are engaging in behaviors that are not necessarily healthy. So how could we go about in giving up bad habits or making positive changes? Any ideas? According to the theory of reasoned action, there are 3 ingredients for an effective change to happen. Obviously, there needs to be an intent of making the change, but to make this intent strong, we also need to have a positive attitude about this new behavior, and the social groups also need to view positively on this new behavior. And when all of these 3 things happen, it leads to the actual behavior. So as an example, say there's an individual who wants to stop using drugs and alcohol. According to the theory of reasoned action, this individual needs to have a positive attitude of wanting to stop using drugs and alcohol. Otherwise, this is not going to work. Also, the social group the individual hangs out the most also needs to view this new behavior positively. So in other words, if the norm of the group of people this individual socialized with was to drink alcohol and use drugs, they probably are not going to look positively on this new behavior of stopping drugs and alcohol. In that case, this individual would need to find a different group of people where the group norm is not using drugs and alcohol. And if these 2 ingredients are met, then the individual could start to develop the specific intent of wanting to stop using drugs and alcohol, which is likely to lead to the actual behavior. Another well-known model that would be useful in making positive life changes is the stages of change model, which describes the 5 stages by which the individual would give up bad habits. So first, individuals who are in the pre-contemplation stage are actually not even considering a change. People in this stage are often described as in denial due to the claims that their behavior is not a problem. The second stage is the contemplation stage. So this is when people become more and more aware of the potential benefits of making a change, but the cost tends to stand out even more. And as a result, this conflict creates a sense of ambivalence about changing. And because of this uncertainty, the contemplation stage of change could last a month or even years. The third stage is the preparation stage. This is where people might begin to make small changes to prepare for a larger life change. So for example, if losing weight is the goal, people might switch to lower fat foods. If the goal is to quit smoking, then an individual might switch to brands or smoke less each day. So basically making small changes but not fully acting on it. The fourth stage is the action stage, where people would begin to take direct action in order to accomplish their goals. And the fifth stage is the maintenance stage, where the goal is to successfully avoid former behaviors and keeping up with the new behaviors. So these are the ideal change process. But it does not end here. Have there been a time that you made the goal of jogging every day or certain days a week? Or it could also be eating healthy diets. What happened to those goals you made in the past? You might have maintained these behaviors for a while, but is it continuing as of right now? If yes, great. But I'm sure, including myself, that some of our previous goals we made went back from maintenance stage to one of the earlier stages. So actually, there is the hidden sixth stage, which is the relapse stage. And this stage is actually included because relapse is such a common occurrence. And when you go through a relapse, you might experience feeling of failure or disappointment or even frustration. But the key to success is to not let these undermine your self-confidence. So if you return back to an old behavior, give a thought about why it happened. What triggered the relapse? What can you do to avoid these triggers in the future? So these are critical questions to think about so that when we repeat the cycle again, we become a little more resistant from the relapse. And that is the key of giving up our bad habits. So hopefully this was useful even for our everyday life. And this is all I got for chapter 14 on health psychology. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks and take care.